I'd like to welcome all of you to Ball State University today, and thank you for attending today's media briefing. Our guest for this afternoon's Women's Week lecture is Wilma Mankiller. Ms. Mankiller will answer questions about her upcoming speech, the changing role of Cherokee women, and her responsibilities as Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. I present Wilma Mankiller.
Thank you. Let me just give you a little overview of what I'm going to talk about. Because this is Women's Studies Week, I talk a lot about history normally when I lecture, but because this is Women's History Week and they've asked me to talk specifically about women's issues and leadership issues, what I thought I would do is I think the best way I can talk about that is by talking about my own election. I'm the first woman to serve in my position, and it was not an easy road getting there. And I thought that it would be important for people to sort of see the path that I took and some of the barriers that I ran into and how I got around them. The other thing that I'm going to do is kind of put my election and my contemporary work in a historical context. I think it's very difficult for people to understand what Native American issues are, what contemporary issues are, without understanding a little bit about history. And there are a lot of historical factors that played a part in our being where we are today, and I think it's important for people to understand that and also understand where we're going from here. So those are the main two things that I'm going to talk about this evening. And so with that, I know you don't know anything about me and where I'm from or anything like that, so we can start wherever you want to start.
You mentioned barriers. What do you see through your own experiences, through your own observations? What do you see as being the barriers that still exist for young women, women in general, if you care to bring it out that far, to assuming leadership roles, to being recognized for their leadership potential?
Well, in elective positions, which I'm more familiar with, I think that there's still a segment of society that sort of has a view of what leadership should be, and they see that they have a male image of leadership rather than a female image, and I think that general overall broad sense of things is one barrier. Another barrier, believe it or not, is women hearing stereotypes about leadership so often that it becomes part of the culture. If you hear all of your life and everyone around you is saying that by and large women don't make good leaders, that's got to seep into people themselves. The other thing I think that is a real barrier is that when women want to run for office, they don't attract the kind of money that men attract. It's much harder to raise money, and it's a much longer shot to get there because of the inability to raise money, and then all the traditional barriers to leadership. We still, even though many people call 1992 the year of the woman, that's ridiculous. And when half of the Congress and half of the Senate is female, then we'll have the year of the woman. But I can remember being a student at San Francisco State 25 years ago, and we were talking then about having maybe 15 women in the United States Senate. And so here we are 25 years later, and we're still talking about the same thing. So it's still a daunting task. It's a society, by and large, of male privilege, and most people just don't realize that. If you are male, it is much easier to get into a leadership position and then retain that. Even at this university, which I'm certainly not going to run down because they're hosting my visit, but if you look at the number of women that are tenured at the university and compared to the men that are tenured, there's certainly some disparity there. So in every segment of society, from elective politics to the academic community, women are underrepresented, and it's a sad situation. We need, in this country, given all the problems that we face, we need every single person who's capable and has the ability to lead. And leaving out so much of the population, I don't think is a good move for us. So we've still got many, many barriers.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that chauvinism is the only word I can think of, is more prevalent in Native American culture or in the broader culture in the U.S.?
Oh, I think it's much more prevalent in the broader culture, and which is it's interesting because I think there's a general stereotype that the opposite is true. But in our tribe, for example, before we became acculturated, we had women and men shared power. It was a matrilineal society. We trace our ancestry through women. When men and women married, that the man would move to the woman's house. There was a women's council. Women were consulted in matters of importance to the tribe. Women accompanied men to war. And then as we became more acculturated, women began to take a secondary role. And so that by the time I ran for election in 1983, our own people were saying, well, we don't think women should help lead the Cherokee Nation. If we elect a woman, our tribe will be the laughing stock of all the tribes and that sort of thing. So, but even today, though our communities are certainly far from intact, and we face a daunting set of problems, by and large, women in our tribe, I think, enjoy more balance between men and women. Obviously, or I wouldn't be elected. We're far from electing a female to head our little 155,000 member tribe, and in the United States, we're a long way from electing a woman to head the United States government. So there's some remnants of our old culture left.
What made you decide to run for office?
It was more happenstance than my waking up one day and thinking I'd be a great leader. Our former chief developed systemic cancer, and he, while he was recovering and having chemotherapy, he asked if I would attend some meetings and perform some tasks that were outside my area. I was the director of the Community Development Department. And so when he recovered and decided to run for election in early 1983, he asked if I would run for deputy chief. And at the time, I had no idea how significant his words were. I asked him, why on earth do you want me to run? And he said, because you're dedicated to the tribe and you're honest with money. And I was expecting something more profound. Well, I can tell you, 3 terms later, I think that, I understand clearly what he meant and how important it is to be dedicated and honest with money when you're in a leadership position. So I ran in 1983 and won, and then ran in 1987 and won for the chief's position, and then again in 1991. And you could sort of see the progression. In 1983, I barely won for deputy chief. In 1987, I won by about 56% of the vote in the 87 election, and then in 1991, I won with almost 83% of the vote. And so you could see sort of a progression and people being much more comfortable with my being in a leadership role.
Is there a limit to your term?
No, but there's a physical limit. You can't do this. I'm 48 now, and I started working there before I was elected when I was 31. And there's just a limit to doing the kinds of work that we're involved in. We run Head Start centers. We have about 600 children in Head Start centers. We have an extensive array of daycare centers. We have a fully accredited high school, which is a boarding school. We run 5 of our own primary health care clinics, full clinics. We provide job training, social services, give out higher education scholarships, build houses, build water systems on the social program side. And then we run a number of businesses, too. And you just can't, it's like being a CEO and running a little bitty, tiny country and being a social worker all at the same time. And you can't physically do that forever. And so I think there's some self-limitation. I also think that people sometimes get in elective positions, not just in small governments like my own, but in governments in general, and think they own the positions, and that sometimes it's time to recognize when you've made your best contribution and move on.
As you look at your tribe, what would you say are the 2 or 3 outstanding issues that cause you the most concern or pose the biggest challenges?
I think in a global sense, getting our people to trust their own thinking again and look to themselves and our own communities to solve our problems. I think that believing in ourselves again and our ability to resolve our own problems in the global sense. And in terms of specific issues, I think that healthcare is a critical issue for us, and as it is for most Americans, it's we're very, very concerned about it, and we have many patients and not enough money. We see too many people who are diagnosed with a serious illness and who aren't eligible for assistance to help pay the bills. They don't have insurance, and they just are not treated. And so that's a serious issue for us. And we've tried to put much more time and effort and dollars into healthcare prevention lately, because there's no way we'll ever have enough money to provide a direct primary care for every single problem. So we've tried to really emphasize healthcare prevention. Education is a big issue for us, and we provide a lot of in-school programs now. We've been looking for some years at the idea of maybe starting a tribally controlled community college. We're thinking about starting, not this summer, but next summer, an intense summer school program, probably for children that are 11 through 13, with critical skills, math, science, English, that sort of thing. All those issues are issues for us. Jobs, and job creation is a huge issue for us, and being in a rural area poses special problems. Business likes to go where business is, and in our community that we're not near great centers. Some of the roads aren't the best, and so we have special problems in job creation. So like our problems in some ways are no different than many rural communities that are somehow skipped the age between rural sort of an agricultural economy, and then we skipped all that and went right into a very highly technological age. And so it's a real issue for us trying to grapple with that right now.
How difficult is it to balance the desire and the right to be independent as a tribe, and also needing assistance in terms of building jobs, infrastructure, roads, water systems, sanitary sewer systems, all those kinds of things that are a part of a society? How do you as chief try to balance that?
Well, I think that first of all, I understand clearly that I'm very pragmatic. I understand that though we gave up all of the Southeast and lost many lives in exchange for the few services that we're able to continue to receive today, that relationship is a precarious one, and we'll always be present in Washington and reminding people of treaty provisions that guaranteed us certain rights, and we'll always be doing that. But I also think that given the fact that federal support for social programs has declined so dramatically, that I also understand that we have to generate our own income. And we have our flagship business is a business called Cherokee Nation Industries, and we've been able to, it's one of the oldest Indian-owned businesses in the country. We've been able to survive the downturn in the economy and are doing well. And so I guess the answer to your question is that part of the solution is to figure out ways to generate our own income. I don't think that there'll ever be a point where our tribe, and probably most tribes, require some kind of federal assistance, just as there won't be a time when the U.S. government won't be providing assistance to governments all over the world. I think that I can't imagine that. And I think there are some tribes maybe that have the resources to just sort of completely go on their own, but I can't see us being able to do that. Our tribe is the second largest tribe in the country. The largest is the Navajo Nation in the southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, that area.
What kind of products does this company that you referenced?
Well, we do everything. We recently bought a furniture company. We make furniture. We have a distributing company, and because we're in Oklahoma, we're at a very good place to do distributing. And then we do some manufacturing. We do wire and cable harness work and that sort of thing. So we do a number of things, and we're thinking about doing is putting together some money to just do development and try to think up new products that we can produce. And the problem right now is that we don't have a proprietary product. We survive on contracts that we get with other companies to manufacture or distribute or make things. And we think that if we could develop our own proprietary product, that'll help us survive. One of the things we're interested in is developing some sort of Cherokee or Native American items, but I don't know yet whether the current interest in the general society in Native American things is temporary and it'll go away, or I want to wait a little while to see about that. But I've sort of thought about taking some of the older items that are maybe now at the Smithsonian or someplace like that, and working out an agreement to find some of the really nice old pieces or something, and then manufacture those for sale. So that may be something we'll look at in the future.
Does your nation worry about losing its own culture? I mean, you're talking that you're the CEO of a large company and you're trying to find new ways to manufacture products. Do you ever worry that with each year you're losing your own culture?
Yeah, but the preservation of we're the tribal government, the Cherokee tribal government, is in some ways like a corporate structure, and there are 1,200 employees there, and so one arm of it deals with business, and one arm deals with social programs, and then another arm is a very political arm. It goes to Congress and represents whatever the issues are among the people. But we also operate a number of programs that are designed specifically to preserve the language and preserve the culture and the history. We recently began a series of workshops for the journalists in Oklahoma and the educators in Oklahoma, and sort of walk them through the political and legal history of the Cherokee Nation. And we're now working on a cultural history of the Cherokee people. But there are separate bands within the Cherokee Nation who do not perform the same functions as the Cherokee Nation, but whose functions are specifically to preserve the old ceremonies and medicine and culture and all that. And we're very supportive of those efforts. So that's a huge issue for every tribe, how to get along in the world and also retain the culture at the same time. Can I just say something about the powwow here? I met this really nice young man who wanted to get the word out about the fact that the Native American, and then I'll give you a copy of this, the Native American community here is putting together their first ever powwow. And it's on Saturday, April 23rd, and it's right after Earth Day, and it's sponsored by Ball State University. And anyway, there's a flyer and then a news article, and I was talking to this, and just one fellow put this together, and then I told them that I was going to talk with you today, and I would give you some information about that, so if you could help him get the word out. And his feeling is that if they do this first one and it doesn't go well, they may not get support to do them in the future. So I'll give that to you so you can put a little note in about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.